A little backstory. My brother Joey had recently passed from a heart attack. Joey and I weren't very close, with Joey being 16 years older than me. We really never saw each other growing up. When Joey turned 40, he moved to an old foreclosed ranch in Iowa, just another way for me and Joey to drift apart. It struck my family as odd that he was moving. He had lived in Cincinnati our whole life, and I had no clue as to why of all places he would move to a remote ranch in Iowa. After about a year of living at that ranch, my mother received a phone call from Joey. He said he felt deathly ill and wasn't sure if the ambulance was going to make it in time. The phone call disconnected, and soon after, they found Joey dead. They didn't know what had happened. Long story short, my mother wanted me to move all of the items out of the ranch. Now, you may be thinking that I'm not too upset about my brother's death, and that isn't true. It's been a while since he passed, and like I said, we were never close. I went 3 years without seeing him at one point, and he would come around once every 4 months while living in the same city as us. So, Joey seemed more like a distant cousin. I have a little brother who I'm extremely close with who feels the same as me. Now that you have the backstory, I can start. A week after Joey passed, I headed up to Iowa, and after asking countless locals and driving for 2 hours, I finally found my brother's place. Upon arrival, I got this sense of grief and depression, as if all that had happened just hit me. I spent a moment in silence, but the silence was broken by a loud crash of thunder. The sky was black, and it was almost 7 p.m., so I decided that I'd call it a night and start packing tomorrow. I decided to sleep on the couch, for obvious reasons. It didn't feel right sleeping in Joey's bed. Trying to sleep on an uncomfortable couch, I attempted to watch TV, but Joey didn't have cable or a DVD player. With TV out of the question, I decided to go outside and relax on the porch. The rain had stopped and it felt nice outside. The patio light illuminated a portion of the yard. The patio is about 5 feet from an overgrown yard, and the yard continues for 30 yards until it's cut off by the woods. There's a dirt walkway that's parallel with the yard, until it forks, and one walkway leads to the garage, and the other leads to a big oak tree that stands alone from the rest of the woods. While standing on the patio, I lit a cigarette and sat on the porch swing. Listening to the squeak of the rusty metal, I heard what sounded like a whistle, like one of those in movies where they use their index finger and thumb. I stopped the swinging and stood swiftly, looking around to where the noise had come from. It happened again, but closer. I tried to put it off as being a bird, but I'm not stupid. It was clearly human. What really irked me about it was the fact that I heard the whistle getting closer, but I didn't hear the slightest hint of footsteps. After sleeping off the weird occurrence from the night before, I decided to go ahead and check the outside of the house. That plan was ruined by a thunderstorm. With the thunderstorm keeping me inside, I started to pack up Joey's stuff. I didn't have to pack everything, just the items that meant something to my family, or any mementos. Before I started packing, I went to Joey's room to see what I was working with. His room was pretty clean, and his bed was even made. His dresser had the essentials, and all of his clothes were folded. I thought it seemed a little too clean, and even thought for a minute I could smell bleach. But the thought was interrupted by a pair of muddy footprints all over the floor. My heart stopped. They must have been mine, I thought. But I never stepped off the patio last night, and more importantly, this was my first time in Joey's room. I was trying to find any rational explanation for the footsteps. After realizing that there wasn't one, I grabbed an old trophy off of Joey's dresser and followed the footprints. The trophy was about 5 pounds, so I figured it would work well as a weapon. The footsteps led downstairs and out the door. It was still raining, but I could see the footsteps leading off the patio and into the yard. The footsteps faded into the grass, but the culprit left behind a trail of bent grass, as if they dragged their feet through the overgrown yard. This next part still makes my heart stop when I think about it. I followed the trail into the grass with my eyes, starting at the beginning of the yard and ending at the woods. But when my eyes reached the woods, I saw someone just standing there staring at me, with a white face, white as paper. He was just waiting for me to find the footsteps and follow them outside. I stared him down for what felt like forever, and he slowly waved at me. I was confused and scared at the same time. Then he turned around and ran into the woods. I had no chance of chasing him, so I went inside and locked the door. I didn't sleep at all that night. Maybe I was overreacting. But Joey's house was 3 miles away from anyone. So what would someone be doing out here during a thunderstorm? I still get creeped out by the guy, wearing all black with his hood up. It's stereotypical horror movie material, but there's a reason why it's a stereotype. Because it's creepy as shit. When the sun had risen the next day, I was on hyperdrive packing faster than ever. I wanted to get out of that house, and out of the area as soon as possible. After most of his room was packed, I decided that it was all the mementos my mother needed, so I started taking the boxes to my car. It was a 2006 Ford Explorer. I bought the car a year prior. It came with tinted windows and leather seat covers, but it didn't come with 4-slash tires. That's right, all 4 of my tires destroyed. I also smelled bleach all over the inside of my car. I wasn't even scared at the time, I was pissed. Why would anyone do this? Now not only am I being toyed with, but I'm stuck here, unless I was gonna bike out. Without a way out of there, I had to stay the night. I called my mother and told her the situation. She told me to call the cops, and I told her it was no big deal, which, looking back on it, now I should have listened to her. I didn't feel like dealing with the cops or making a report. I'd already been up for 30 hours and I was tired. It was around 5 o'clock, and the sun was starting to set when I heard a knock on the door. I immediately grabbed the baseball bat that I had found while packing, and went to the door. I looked out the small window on the door. There was no one there. But I could see all the way across the yard, and the same guy in the hood. At this point, I was done playing games. I swung the door open and I ran towards the bastard. About halfway towards the woods, I realized he wasn't running. He didn't move muscle. I stopped running, but I was still trotting towards him. When I was about 10 feet from him, he put his hand out, signaling me to stop. I don't know why I did, but I stopped. I was confused and pissed. The man moved his hand to his mouth and whistled. The same whistle I had heard the first night I was there. What I saw next nearly gave me a heart attack. About 8 other men came out from behind the trees, all wearing the same outfit as the man who'd whistled. Every single one of them was holding a weapon. Hatchets, knives, lead pipes, and enough weaponry to tear me to shreds. I didn't realize it until now, but all of them were wearing masks. Plain, expressionless masks. They all had the mouth area cut out. I guess that's how they were able to whistle so deafeningly. I didn't know what to do, so I just shouted at them, "What do you want?" The whistler, is what we can call him, put his finger to my mouth and shushed me. I walked up and cracked him in the head with a bat. He fell to the ground. He didn't even flinch when I swung the bat at him, but when he hit the ground, his partner started running at me. I booked it for the house, and as soon as I got to the steps of the patio, another freak walked out of the front door with a machete. I ran to the car. I'd rather screw up my rims than die, but I didn't realize that my keys were inside the house. So I ran around the front of the house and started down the road. With my sheer luck, a police officer was driving down the road. I had never been so relieved in my life. I ran waving my arms at the officer. He drew his firearm and told the culprits to freeze. They broke off into the woods on both sides of the road. It looked like it was choreographed. They all seemed so calm. It was odd. It was frightening. How many times had they done this? It was like clockwork. The officer told me to get in the car. Before saying anything, he made a U-turn and he hightailed it out of there. The officer later explained that it wasn't luck that he was strolling down the road. My mother contacted the police because she was worried. Thank God she did. The officer also explained that this had been happening frequently, and there had been some murders around the area. I immediately asked if it had anything to do with Joey's death. The officer said he didn't think so, considering Joey died from illness, and all the other victims were brutally murdered. That was a relief, considering what could have happened to Joey. I was glad that I was out of there, and I was glad to be back in Cincinnati. That was until a week later. The toxicity report came back on Joey. They discovered traces of bleach in his blood.